second paper is about dedicated short-range communication, being presented by Dr. Kim. Dr. Kim is a professor with Georgia Southern University. So, Kim, please.
Thank you for the introduction. My name is MILCOM. I'm an assistant professor at Georgia Southern University. This is actually one of my two primary projects. One is totally different. It's in human exposure in wireless communication systems. And the second thrust in my research is V2X communications. So if you have any chance, you can refer to my webpage, and there's some more information on my current projects. So this very one is if you deploy DSRC for V2X communications employed by military, and if you are having by any chance any interference from the existing other commercial or civilian cars, and how you can maximize the performance of military vehicles for operations by prioritizing the military transitions. So it's actually starting from a more generic framework. I'm working on optimization of DSRC communications itself, the distributed networking. But because it's a MILCOM, so I kind of customize the context to maximize the performance of military. So some backgrounds, I'm sure you will be able to easily agree with me. The entire world is becoming more urban, and I didn't even know this before writing this paper. By 2014, around half of the world population is living in a city, and the intensity is getting severe. So it's an easy assumption that any military operation, including humanitarian assistance or disaster relief, which is we're having more frequently. I'm from Georgia, which is the most popular path of hurricanes. Any assistant activities by the military, it's going to be more likely in any type of city. So our discussions focuses then what if any military force is called for and deployed in an urban operation, and there should be some sort of commercial and existing civilians infrastructure working already, and will there be an interference between those two dissimilar systems? And we also agree that wireless communications should be taking essential technological parts in doing any military operations, things to be connected. We are almost automatically expecting that, no matter if it's artificial intelligence or anything, you name it. So taking that assumption, and we were able to find some unique challenges as then, like I talked multiple times, then how we can mitigate, how we can deal with the interference between military and commercial. And the problem is that if you are, for example, an army force and you are just deployed to a city of Norfolk, for example, and this is your first time to be deployed and physically be here, and because you're not local, and it's not easy to have a quick and complete idea on how all the social and organizational things are established, and it's going to take time to pick up some knowledge on that. So in other words, you don't know much about this local information. And also, if you add the already existing commercial infrastructure, there should be an easily very high overload of information that you need to deal with. In switching some gear about the discussion, I'm identifying dedicated short-range communications, also known as DSRC, as the key enabling technology for the V2X communications, connecting the vehicles in a distributed manner. As far as I understand, the United States is one of the countries who is not decided about the 5.9 gigahertz band for ITS, Intelligent Transportation System. Union had made the decision back in April this year to dedicate the 5.9 gigahertz band for DSRC. So any other type of technology cannot jump in and transmit, emit any radio frequency energy in the 5.9 gigahertz band in Europe. And in the States, the FCC is still undecided how to deal with the 5.9 gigahertz band. It has been allocated from 1999, so it's been around 20 years so far by the FCC. For DSRC, it's a 75 megahertz chunk, or it's 7, 10 megahertz channels. And so far, we don't have any problem because not many cars are capable of communications yet. So on the road, only some cars, I don't even have the figure, but maybe a 1-digit percentage of cars on the road are actually able to communicate with each other. So the 7 channels might suffice the traffic, and we're not experiencing any traffic blown up or anything. But the National Highway Traffic Safety Association, I don't think it's legal yet, but it should be somewhere pending in the House or Senate. They are moving swiftly to mandating the communications capability in any newly manufactured cars starting from 2020. So we can imagine that more cars are communicating with each other, and if you go to, for example, a big city like New York City, in a single junction rush hour, there can be easily thousands of cars in a single junction traffic hour, and 7 channels are not definitely enough for supporting all the traffic over the air. So how we can manage the traffic blow up in DSRC, that's my primary focal point recently, and I'm just customizing this into the military context. So getting deep into more technically, simply because DSRC is one family of IEEE 802.11, and well, maybe some of you are experts in this. 11P is a inherited family of 11A, so it technically has many technical features inherited from 11A. So therefore, it's also following the CSMECA for multiple access, which is just completely a flat and not prioritized multiple access scheme. Whether you're access point or just mobile station, your vehicle, no matter what type of data you have, you are having all the same priority of accessing the channel by the uniformly distributed contention window value, back of counter. So that's the assumption, and that's the baseline of this entire work. So we are able to define the problem statement, then we want to prioritize the military signals over civilian ones in DSRC, if possible. Again, this always can be extended to any generic context. You know, if you want to design the same problem with system A, it should be prioritized over system B, and you can extend this knowledge too. But I'm just fitting this into military context. So I was able to establish a system model in this way. Well, I know it can be extended in infinitely many different ways. It can be an interstate highway. It can be a 5-way junction, 4-way, 3-way, anything like that. So rather than focusing on this junction, 2 6-lane, 2 road segments, I'm rather more focusing on how we drop the vehicles on this 2-dimensional space. Yeah, by the way, it's a 2-dimensional space. I'm not considering the height of the vehicles, any transmitter receiver heights. It's just on the plane. In DSRC, technically, I'm assuming the broadcast of basic safety messages. It's a periodic broadcast type of message. Pretty much, you want to report your current status to all the neighboring vehicles. So that's one communication functionality implemented by DSRC. And upon that, there can be some applications. If you have periodic broadcast functionality, then you can think of millions of different applications that you can design over that. And if you know some technical details, BSMs, broadcast basic safety messages, are usually transmitted over the control channel. There are 7 channels for DSRC, and the control channel is at the very center. So at the center, CCH, control channel, and all the shared channels are 3 to the left and 3 to the right. That's the channel structure. And we don't have yet a clear or standardized idea on how many basic safety messages per second is broadcast. But in the nominal sense, the nominal acknowledgement and agreement so far is around 10 BSM per second, so 10 hertz. If you observe a certain vehicle for 1 second, and there are 10 BSMs being broadcast around. And well, just some side note information, cellular V2X based on 3GPP release 15, that's my up-to-date latest information. CV2X have multiple options about this parameter, how many messages you broadcast per second. CV2X has some options, but it also starts from 10, as far as I remember, and it also has 15 and 20, but it has some flexible options in DSRC. So 10 messages per second, it's kind of widely accepted nominal acknowledgement so far, but not standardized. And if you imagine a transmission of a packet, well, I'm a vehicle being driven on the road, and I generate 10 messages per second. And let's then zoom in and think about the results, possible results of one packet transmission. So we have 4 fundamental results. So any packet transmission will end up with any one of these 4. Number 1 is expiration, because it's CSMECA, and we have the timeline, the time duration of 100 milliseconds, because for 1 second, you need to transmit, you need to generate 10 messages. So for each packet, it's only 100 milliseconds. But in CSMECA, you are backing off from transmission. Right? For example, the contention window is 15, and you got the backup counter of 14, and you need to see 14 slots, 14 empty slots, in order to decrement the backup counter to 0. Only after that you can transmit. So it's easy that you miss the 100 millisecond timeline. So you back off, and you back off again, either for decrementing your backup counter, or because the channel was busy. So if you are unable to transmit your packet within 100 milliseconds, we classify this as an expiration. Your packet has been expired, it's discarded, and you generate the next sequence number of next packet. And there are 2 different types of collisions. One, synchronized transmission. It's possible, well, by the way, DSRC starts from contention window being 15. It means that if there's more than 15 cars in your carrier sense range, it is a possibility that more than one vehicles are happening by a bad luck, happening to be allocated the same exact backup counter. So even though you are able to sense each other in your carrier sense range, but if you are allocated the same backup counter between more than one vehicles, and they are to collide. Another type of collision is hidden node collision, which is just far, very well known type of collision in Wi-Fi nature, right? So you have 2 different circles, and if your receiver is in the middle of that 2 transmission range, and these 2 vehicles, transmitting vehicles, are not able to sense each other, so they just transmit packets, but any receiver that's falling in the middle, that receiver is experiencing some collision. And the 4th type is, of course, successful delivery, being defined as no exploration, so packet was able to be transmitted and not undergoing any type of collision. So I'll be showing you some equation in a moment from now. And this is a geometry for a synchronized transmission. So let's say vehicle G is representing transmitting vehicle, and vehicle C is the vehicle that's transmitting the colliding packet. And any receiving vehicle that's falling into this red intersecting area, it's experiencing some type of synchronized transmission. And also, so this is showing the minimum and maximum collision area in theory, geometrically, because in order to experience a synchronized transmission, two colliding vehicles must be in their carrier sense range. So the maximum separation of two vehicles is one from the center and the other at the radius, at the border of the carrier sense area. And the maximum possible collision area is caused by the minimum possible distance between the two vehicles. And although theoretically it can be zero, but on the road, no vehicle can be placed on the same position. It's an accident. So I was assuming some inter-vehicle distance is a minimum value, so it's happening right there. And some mathematical rationale behind it and how I can exactly formulate the probability of a synchronized transmission. So we start from measuring the number of vehicles in a potential synchronized transmission area. So we can define the area of a collision region and how many vehicles can occur in that particular area of the region. That's the starting point. So as you can see, the distance, of course, I set this as zero, but as I told you just a few moments ago, it's not practically possible, but just because it's a theory, we start from zero, and the maximum possible separation distance between the two vehicles is the carrier sense range. I'm just using RTX, which is transmission range, interchangeably because I'm assuming carrier sense and transmission range is the same. Okay, then I proceed to formulate the probability of no sync among the N0 vehicles that was formulated in the previous slide. Okay, so you can see this mathematical logical flow. I define the probability of a certain number of users for a certain area and no sync among the end users, and I proceed to no sync in general sense for all the possible values of N0, and the probability of sync is 1 minus that. So I will not be very specific in the technical details here. That's the logical flow of formulating the probability. And for hidden nodes, the mathematical flow, the derivation flow is the same, but we have now different geometries, because hidden nodes, the two packet colliding vehicles must be outside of each other's carrier sense range. So we have the same derivation process, but with different geometry. So here are 3 metrics for evaluating performance. And I'm sure you should be having an easy intuition about these 3 different metrics. It's just pretty classical and typical, intuitive. So packet delivery rate, so how many packets you can receive per unit time. Of course, your packet must not be expired. That's the first condition for any packet being transmitted. And then no collision by synchronized transmission, no collision by hidden nodes. So based upon that, we can also define delay. Depending on different types of packet results, we multiply different time length taken. And based upon the delay, we can also define the throughput. And this is a protocol, by the way. So I can be quick. There's nothing much different from the CSMAC that you know But the secret sauce that we're doing right here is to insert a additional decision-making process in the middle, an additional filtering criterion according to the distance. So the main idea is if a civilian transmitter is here, and if that transmitter is too close to a military transmitter, we suppress this transmission down. So this is what I'm talking about. From the leftmost to the rightmost, we are increasing the threshold distance. So the red dots are suppressed down civilian vehicles, and these black dots are civilian vehicles that are transmitted. And these green squares, those are military vehicles. So you can see from here to here, there are more red dots than black dots. It means that we are applying a more harsh suppression for civilians. And well, intuitively, we can achieve some effective performance improvement for the military in terms of the PDR, packet delivery rate. It's kind of slight, but it's going up, and delay going down, and throughput going up. So the key idea, I think it's, well, a simple statement that, of course, if you suppress the civilian chance of transmission down, and military can get more chance, because CSMCA is an open, non-prioritized, open, multiple access scheme. So I can wrap this up pretty intuitive, and I'm sure nothing challenging there to understand. Well, we want to maximize the performance of military operations based on DSRC by suppressing the civilians' access down, depending on a certain criterion that was the distance to the closest military vehicle. So we were able to confirm through our 3 different metrics. And yeah, that finalizes my presentation. Any questions?
Any questions? Go ahead.
Yes, sir.
The vehicle, let's say civilian vehicle, how close is the military vehicle? Military vehicles tend not to transmit their location.
Well, that's a wonderful question, because, well, I was being theoretic in, to be honest with you, I was not having a practical answer than how, if I'm a commercial civilian vehicle, and how I can measure the distance to the closest military vehicle. But yeah, I was just assuming that it's known. If there's some way that we can sense, or in a neat way. So yeah, but thanks for the question.
Any other questions for Dr. Kim? Yeah, so like I have a quick question here. It's just basically the control here, like the priority is based on distance. Any kind of experimental values in terms of what is the distance, like how far away, or what's the value of distance would be more applicable, like affect your performance?
I think it's almost in the same line of question that this gentleman. One thing that we can practically
I'm just assuming you know the distance. Well, that's a huge question. Like yeah,
Yes.
But even if you know the distance, because probably because of my background, like you usually have propagation, and depends on where you are, your transmission power, and all that. How am I going to define distance? Unless I can see the SNR or my noise floor or whatever. Otherwise.
Well, yeah, if it's a normal DSRC system, it's actually up to an application designer how you
Sure.
define the structure, the containment in a basic safety message. But it's not a challenging task to embed your GPS information in there. It's a different story for military vehicles, of course, because it's can be classified. But if it's a commercial vehicle or any your own car, then it's not a difficult task to embed the GPS coordinate. Then
So your control message would basically
any
say.
Euclidean distance
Yeah.
calculation can be from there. Yes.
Okay. So, yeah, we thank Dr. Kim. So do we have the third paper presented? Are you Troy?
Yes.
Oh, okay, yeah.